Hello everyone, welcome back to my podcast. My name is Ari and I'm the host of this podcast. And I'm back, you guys. I'm back with another fun author episode. And this week's book is actually a really amazing and spooky book. So just to let you guys know, basically from here on out, almost like to the end of the year, I guess until November or somewhere around there, all of my content is going to be spooky content. It's going to be spooky book reviews with the authors that wrote those amazing spooky books, or like scary books if you want to use another word instead of spooky. But just to let you guys know, that is going to be the rest of my content almost for the rest of the whole year. So if you're like me and if you love spooky, scary book and book recommendations, then I would be very excited, because I know I personally am very excited to be producing all of this content for the rest of the year, because like I said, I just really enjoy this stuff. So I hope you guys do too. You have a lot of it coming your way to the end of 2023. So I hope you guys are as excited as I am, if not more excited. But let's go ahead and jump into this week's episode, where I'm going to go ahead and review and even do an interview with the author of this book. So I'm sure you're wondering, what's the name of the book? The name of the book is, drumroll please, The Sleepover, and it is by Michael Regina. So this book is a middle grade graphic novel, and I believe it's actually classified as a horror, so it's a middle grade horror graphic novel, but don't let that scare you, it's not that terrifying. But let's go ahead and talk about what you guys can expect from this middle grade book. So this book basically follows four main characters, and they are the four boys on the front cover. Actually, before I get into that, can you guys just look at the cover, admire the front cover, you guys? Just look at it for a second. It is so spooky and creepy. Gives me the best vibes ever. It's called The Sleepover, which is obviously on the front cover, and if you look right above the name, there's this black monster with glowing eyes that already looks so terrifying and so amazing at the same time. And then you have the four main characters, which go in the order from left to right: Tio, Matthew, Mario, and Charlie. I hope I didn't get those wrong. I'm pretty sure I got those all right. I love the book, after all. I do know all the character names, and they're all just eating junk food, popcorn, pizza, soda, chips, and they're having a sleepover, hence the name, and they're just having a fun little movie night watching scary movies. I just love the cover so much. It's a perfect synopsis almost of the book itself. Just tells you everything you need to know just in the cover, which is what drew my attention to this book. So that's the cover, but now let me go back into what I was saying about the synopsis and what you can expect from this book. You guys, if you like Stranger Things, this is the book for you. I just want to say that from the beginning. There are so many Stranger Things, not references at all. They don't reference Stranger Things at all, but just so many things where I was oh,
I wonder if he got that from Stranger Things season 2.
Just the silliest of smallest little things that in my head I was
oh, that reminds me of Stranger Things.
And knowing that this book is for fans of Stranger Things, and I believe Michael is a fan of Stranger Things, I was
did he do that because he loved Stranger Things so much and he got inspired by that?
I'll go more into detail of what I'm talking about after I do the review and the synopsis. But yeah, if you are a fan of the Netflix show Stranger Things, 4 seasons, I love that show so much. It's so creepy and frightening at times, but also just an amazing story. This is not an episode about Stranger Things, but like I said, if you are a Stranger Things fan, then this is definitely the book for you. But now for the millionth time, let's talk about the summary and what you can expect from The Sleepover. So like I was saying before I got interrupted by myself, this book follows the four main characters on the cover, which is Tio, Matthew, Mario, and Charlie, and they are all best friends. So it starts off with them just having a normal one of their little sleepovers, watching scary movies, staying up late at night. You see that they're all friends, they're all having fun, and they have a nanny, and her name is Ruby. Ruby is the sweetest nanny ever. She's so kind, and she just loves the kids so much. But unfortunately, Ruby is not with us for the entire story, which is actually really sad, but it really helped with the character development later on in the story. But Ruby, the nanny, dies, which is, like I said, was very sad. We didn't even get that much time with her, which I really would have wanted more time with Ruby, because she was just so sweet and loving and caring. But unfortunately, we did not get that much story time with her, which is okay, because then it obviously gets the story moving along. So that was in the prologue, and in chapter 1, we start off with now Matthew, because it was Matthew's babysitter, or Matthew's nanny, and how he is dealing with her her death. And he's grieving, obviously, because he loved her so much, and the mom has to find a new nanny to watch the kids because Matthew also has a little sister. Her name is Judy, and the mom has to work, obviously, so she has to find a new nanny to watch both Matthew and Judy, and then when the boys come over to obviously take care of them as well. And they've been trying for a while. They put posters up, but they can't find anyone until one day this kind of mysterious woman comes and she's like,
yes, I'll do the job. I'll be the new nanny.
the mom leaves like that very night for work because she's been missing work for days, so she goes to go work. And basically what I love so much about the story is that the rest of the story from there takes place all in one night, which is why I loved it. You really got like the whole night. You got the whole experience. It was action-packed. It was just amazing. But let's just say that maybe this new nanny is not a human in most ways, and maybe she is quite literally a monster. I know. What else is there to say? I'll just leave it at that. Go check out the book, you guys. So I guess that's all I have to say about this book. It's amazing. Go check it out, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye, friends! No, guys, I'm just kidding. I'm still here. That was just a joke because basically all I need to tell you guys to convince you to go pick up this book is that it's about a group of boys and the little sister and that their new nanny might quite literally be a monster. Like, I feel like that's all I would need to know. That's all I did know when going into this book, because anything about kids having a fun sleepover, watching scary movies, eating junk food with their new nanny that may be a monster coming after them, that is just perfect. I read this in one sitting at night, reading it with a flashlight in the dark. That really didn't help me because I felt scared going to sleep that night, but it was a wonderful experience. It literally was so like atmospheric in the dark in my bedroom. It was just an insane experience. I do recommend reading it in the dark with like an ambiance YouTube video. I was gonna do that, but since I read it in one time, I didn't have time to do that. But if you get like a thunderstorm in the background and then in the dark reading it with the flashlight, I highly recommend reading any spooky, creepy book with the flashlight at night in the dark. It just really is such an amazing experience. So if you haven't tried that out, do try it out this fall because it just really is an amazing experience, like I said. But yeah, that's the synopsis of the book, you guys. I don't want to mess it up for you of what actually ends up happening to the characters. But let me just say the villain or the bad character in this book was a little creepy and terrifying at times, which Michael, you did an amazing job with the illustrations. I love them so much. Even the villain slash bad character, whatever we're calling it, I loved how you made it like, oh yeah, that's definitely the villain, you know? And I just love that every character, or really like the main 3-4 characters, they had reason to the emotions they were feeling. Like Matthew and Judy, they're going through the loss of their nanny, which was like a family member to them, and you really tell like their sadness, and they're not as close as they were before she died. Like the siblings are just growing apart from each other, which has a huge part to do with the story, and just their whole family, the mom and Matthew and Judy. You can just tell that they're separate from each other. They're very different from after Ruby's death. So I love that there was that in it because it really helped with the character development. And as I was talking about the villain slash bad character, there was also a great backstory to that character as to why she is the villain. Like, I love when you see a villain and maybe they're just misunderstood because they're hurting inside or something is wrong with them in some way. So I loved the backstory of the villain. I think it was very well done. And basically, like I said, I just love the character development for the main characters, for Matthew, Judy, and then their mom, which her name is Cheryl, and then the nanny, the new nanny, and the old nanny. The old nanny was Ruby, and the new nanny is Miss Swan. I think they all have such wonderful character development. As I've said so many times, character development, yes, they just were all wonderfully done, and I really love that of a book. I love when characters, you've like gone through the experiences that they've gone through, so you feel for them and you're actually connected to them, and it's not just something on a piece of paper. It's like a real life character that you can maybe relate to or actually feel for. So yeah, I really loved how all the characters were done. Like I said, I love the illustrations, and the storyline was just insane. It was crazy. It was great. So you guys, if you want a book filled with family and friendship and then dealing with loss and grief and how to get over that and move forward and just live your life as they would want you to and not being sad and depressed and just living your life moving forward but even better than before, and then also of course that element of spooky monsters chasing you, coming after you, and then like I said, there are also so many Stranger Things-esque moments. There's even like a part where it's just a picture of the four boys and they have their flashlights and they're behind this gate, and it reminded me of like a scene from Stranger Things, the four boys with their flashlights. Of course, the four boys. Like, the four boys here are Tio, Matthew, Mario, and Charlie. And then in the first season of Stranger Things, like, the main characters, the main four boys are Will, Lucas, Mike, and Dustin. So I just love how like it's the four boys trope. In Stranger Things, they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and here they just love to watch scary movies. So like I said, there are a lot of like similarities, but yet they are still entirely 100% their own different stories. And also, like, there was this part where basically salt plays a huge role in this book. That's all I'll say. And not that this really had to do like anything with Stranger Things, but there was this part where they had to get like a lot of salt to make a deprivation tank. And it's just like the slightest things that I caught myself as being a fan of both of these things, the book and Stranger Things. I was like, oh, that reminded me of that from that. And then also, like, there's this other little scene. It's like literally just a page where it shows that their weapons are getting to fight this monster in the book, and it shows a little slingshot with rocks. It reminded me of a part from Stranger Things when Lucas has a wrist rocket, as he calls it, and it's basically a little slingshot where they put rocks in it to try to fight their monster in their world. So there were just a lot of little things like that that really reminded me of Stranger Things, and me loving Stranger Things so much, it was so nice to see little elements of that in this middle grade book, because I love middle grade and I also love Stranger Things. So combining both of those together, but like I said, still being totally different, was really amazing and really great. So I just really love this book so much. Check it out by clicking the link in this episode description, which also super cool. The link that I'm actually linking for this episode is just one link, but this link will take you directly to tons of different places to purchase a book. It could be like from Barnes & Noble or Amazon or the publishing company. I don't remember exactly which links it had there because Michael made this link, but it's super cool. It has all of those things, and the first thing that it has, the first link option, is actually something called like the true story behind the Sleepover, and that is a YouTube video that Michael made, which is super cool. Not all authors have YouTube channels, but Michael does, which I love when authors have YouTube channels, so I can just go binge all of their videos as to their journey and why they started this book, why they created it, and just like their whole journey becoming an author. So if you like that too, then Michael does have a YouTube channel, which like I said, you can access by clicking the link in this episode description. And yeah, so if you want to purchase his book, or if you want to go check out his YouTube video, then be sure to go click the link in this week's episode description, and it'll take you directly to any of those things that you want to see or learn more about. But yeah, you guys, before I get into the interview with Michael that I got to do, which was so amazing and so fun. Michael is such a cool person as an author and illustrator. It was so great to do, but I just want to let you guys know you really have to buy it. I know I'm probably getting annoying with me telling you guys that you have to check it out, you have to read it, but you guys, when I tell you that this was a spooky horror middle grade graphic novel, there's nothing else to say about it. If you want it for Halloween time, then buy it for Halloween time. Read it at night in the dark with the flashlight, with the thunderstorm ambiance, either on your headphones or just playing on your phone or laptop or TV, and it will be the perfect mood slash like setup for this book. So just be sure, you guys, to check it out. It was an incredible read. I really did love it so much. I'm probably gonna reread it for Halloween on like a more spookier night, or if it's like actually raining outside. I only said the thunderstorm ambiance thing because it never rains where I live, especially not in the summer right now. But if you live somewhere where like it rains every single night, definitely do it when there's a big thunderstorm. Perfect atmosphere, I'm telling you. So yeah, just be sure to go check it out. And now let's go ahead and get into the interview that I got to do with Michael, which like I said, it was such an honor. So yeah, here it is. Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for being here with me today doing this interview. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you're having an amazing day. And before we begin, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to read and review and help promote your amazingly insane middle grade horror graphic novel, The Sleepover. It's honestly a book that I am going to reread in Halloween time, like around that month in October. I'm definitely going to read this book. So thank you for allowing me to read it here on my podcast. But let's go ahead and get into this interview. So the first question I have for you is, what made you want to be an author slash illustrator?
I first decided I wanted to make comics when I was in the third grade. This kid next to me on the bus going to school one morning had a comic that he had written and drawn, and I had never put the pieces together that this was something I could do if I wanted to, that I could make my own stories. And I remember getting so excited about it. I went home that night, got a new pad of paper and a pen, and started telling my own stories, and kind of have been doing it ever since. Obviously, there's a lot that's changed over time, and the kinds of comics I make are very different than what I was making then. But that was sort of the beginning of it for me. And yeah, I've been doing it ever since then.
That is so cool to know that like this has been one of your dreams since you were in 3rd grade. I mean, like little young Michael was probably so excited, like you said, when he found out that could be something that he could do, you know, creating your own like comics or now considered like as graphic novels. It's crazy to think that if it weren't for that little boy that you sat next to on the bus, maybe you wouldn't have known that this is something that you can do with your life, either as your job or as a side hustle, whatever it is, that this is something that you can do that you find happiness and joy in. So honestly, it's not all thanks to that little boy, but like a huge portion of it is thanks to that little boy, because maybe if you wouldn't have seen, like I said, you wouldn't have been creating your amazing books, and then I wouldn't have had my new favorite horror middle grade book. But that is so great to hear that because of that little boy, because of that morning you were going to school on the bus, you got to create your own comics that you get to share with the world. So that was such a great response. I love that. I love when I hear from authors that they got it from school, because while most kids, sometimes including myself on certain days, do not like going to school or do not like school period for whatever reason it is, there are good things that come out of it that will actually help you in your future, like your future self, your career. Because another author I did, Matt McMahon, he said that he got it from like a writing competition thing that they were doing at his school in, I think, middle school it was. So if he wouldn't have done that, then he wouldn't have become an author, and if you wouldn't have been going to school that day, you wouldn't have found your passion for becoming an illustrator, an author. So sometimes school does have some good things to it. But let's go ahead and move on to the second question I have here for you, which is obviously still talking about your amazing book, and it is, what inspired you to create a horror graphic novel where the summary / synopsis is basically a sleepover that takes a very dark turn to kids thinking that their new nanny is quite literally a monster?
I would say the initial spark for the idea for the sleepover came about thinking about two of my favorite books at the time. I was thinking a lot about Neil Gaiman's Coraline, as well as his book Ocean at the End of the Lane. Both of them are about a kid facing off against something terrible, like some sort of evil presence. But what's interesting about both of them to me was that they mostly are pretty confined stories about kids who are inside of their home dealing with this sort of thing. So I wanted to tell that kind of a story. And then the idea that really catapulted it over for me was tying it back to some events that happened in my own life involving my family at that time when I was around 11 or 12, in the passing of our nanny Ruby at the time, and really wanted to talk about that feeling of loss and grief and how we worked through that, but also how I've learned to work through that sort of thing as an adult. So it just seemed like a perfect sort of combination of things. It gave me the opportunity to say something I hope was meaningful, but also gave me a situation in which a monster might enter a home and the kids might have to contend with that monster.
Yes, I totally agree with you. More specifically, I agree with you on when you said how when you lost your nanny when you were around that age, which I'm so sorry. I know any death, even if it's years and years later, it's still hard and it still hurts a little bit. But I know that, like you were saying, when you want to kind of create something from that, I think that's something very special in storytelling, whether you're like a movie producer or a movie director or just like any type of artist in any shape or form. If you're an author or illustrator or a singer, songwriter, whatever you are, even if you're just doing like actual art, like painting or drawing or sketching, I think that you can get the best story, even the most valuable and unique, really special to you as the artist, is when you are doing it from an experience that you had. I think it makes it so unique. No one else is going through what you're going through exactly. You know, obviously everyone goes through death and loss. The way that you handle it and the way that you deal with it and how you come out of it and what helped you during it is different for everyone, and what you do with it after, if you just put it aside or if you put it towards maybe helping other people or putting it in a book or song, like I said, I think it's so special. And I love how you based it off of that. And then you also said that you based it off of Coraline by Neil Gaiman, which I did read Coraline, I believe, last year for the first time ever. I was really excited to read it. I read it. Unfortunately, I didn't care for it too much, to be honest with you, but I did like the story. I think it was very creative, very unique, unlike any other book I've ever read or really heard about. And I do like how you said, because I didn't actually really put two and two together until you said that it takes place in her home, kind of, in a way. And your book also does take place in the house and then maybe like in the backyard some of the time. So I love how you said that. Like I said, all these similarities from different movies or books that I'm grabbing from. It's wonderful. It's amazing to have little bits and pieces from other things that other fans are from that can now read it in your book. So I love that you said that. And then the way you ended your response talking about how kids would have to fight a monster, I think it's just such a wonderful wonderful trope in a way, like a monster coming after kids kind of trope. I think it's wonderful and crazy because so many different things can happen, and the way that you executed it was just so incredible and just wonderful to read. It was just really great. It was an amazing story, amazing illustrations, amazing everything, and I just love the whole thing of a monster coming after kids for reasons unknown, as I will not mess it up for the readers. But now, moving on to the next question I have here for you is about your characters in the book. So as I was saying in the review that I did for your episode, I talked about how I loved the character development for all of your characters, especially the main few characters. So this question is kind of goes hand in hand with that. And the question I had here for you was that the main characters in the Sleepover are the four boys, Tio, Matthew, Mario, and Charlie. And I'm just curious if any of them are based on people you knew or you know, and also why did you choose four boys to be like the main characters? And I know that you said Ruby was actually your nanny, and the nanny in here was also Ruby. But besides that, what other people did you have in mind when bringing this story to life?
Yeah, actually, every character in the story is based on somebody I know. The story is deeply rooted in my own personal experience. That was part of what drew me to telling it. I not only got to tell a story about a group of kids fighting a monster, but I got to go down this sort of memory lane of my experiences and friendships at the time. So the family is based on my own family. The house, even down to the house that the kids live in, is based on the house I grew up in, and the neighborhood as well. That lake in the backyard, the woods sort of behind there, is based on the neighborhood and all I grew up in. As for the question of why four boys, again, it just went back to that was my experience at the time. Those are the relationships I had, and it was important for me to represent those relationships as they were and explore those dynamics I had with my friends. And so, yeah, that's really where it came from. It was being honest with the sort of events that happened and the things that drew me to telling that story, which was thinking about the friendships I had at the time and even the relationships happening within my own family.
You know, I know I already said this in one of the other questions, so I was saying how everyone has their own unique story to tell, but I think that is just amazing. First of all, wonderful response. Thank you. But how you said that basically everything in the book, even down to the house and the neighborhood and the woods behind the house and the lake, is all based on like your childhood and how your family was and your friends at the time, I think is so special. And when I read your book, obviously at the time I did not know that even down to the house was like your life when you were growing up. And now knowing that, it's such a special feeling to know that to some readers, like I said, even like myself when I was reading it, you just read it as a story. But now knowing that, and my audience will now know it too, it's not just a story. It has elements of your life, of course with a little bit of fun with some monster and monsters coming after kids. But like you said, you got to do a monster nanny, but then you also got to put in your own family and your own life. And I think it was so beautifully done because it wasn't obvious as to where I was like,
oh yeah, that was definitely from his family, or oh yeah, that's definitely so fake and monstery.
Like they blended so beautifully both of those two concepts or like topics, whatever you want to call them. So like I've said many times, I just think you did an amazing job with the story and combining everything from almost like a Coraline type thing to where it takes place all in one house to a few little Stranger Things, just like little things that reminded me of Stranger Things, to your own family life and to other monster movies. And I know in the book you made references to some older movies. Basically just the book was fantastic. I think it's so special, and even more special than the book itself, knowing that it's based on your own personal experiences, even down to the house, like you said, which I think is just like such a great storyteller. You're an amazing storyteller to where you can put your own life and your own experiences into a wonderful story about monsters, and no one would ever know it was mostly about your life. So great job on that. Like I said that many times, but just great job on the story. I think you did an amazing job in everything. So I'm just going to stop talking about it now so I don't annoy everyone. And now moving on to the last question I have for you for this interview, which is kind of sad because this interview has been so fun. But the last question I have for you was more of a fun little question just to get to know you better as a person instead of the creator of the Sleepover, just you as a normal human being. So the question that I picked for you today was, what is your all-time favorite movie and or TV show and why?
My absolute favorite movie of all time is Jaws. I saw it when I was very young, and I've watched it basically every year since then. I just think it's the best sort of amalgamation of suspense and humor and action action. It's really held up very well for a movie as old as it is. I never kind of get tired of it. It really got me excited about not only telling stories, but fishing and all that. So it's had this like really big impact on me as a story, beyond just being a movie. It's shaped some of the things I care about in life too. And then as far as like shows, my favorite TV show is something that I've sort of thought about over time. There's so many great shows out there, but for me, it probably comes down to The Twilight Zone, the original version that Rod Serling created. I think he's a brilliant writer and he says a lot of meaningful things in a very short period of time with each episode. And I love the idea that each story is sort of its own new thing that kicks up all over again. So yeah, those two things have probably had the biggest impact on me as a storyteller over time. And if it's not them, it's probably something very closely related to them as far as like creators that have come out as a result of them, like M. Night Shyamalan and the stories he tells, the sort of twist endings and things he puts in his stories have been really impactful to me as I've grown up and been an adult storyteller.
So you guys, now we all know that Michael's all-time favorite movie is Jaws, which, by the way, no offense to any like Jaws fans, including you, Michael, but I have never watched Jaws. I know, it's crazy. It's like such a classic for so many different reasons, I'm sure, but I have never watched it. But you know what? I asked this question one other time for one of my other authors. Actually, it was also Matt McMahon, which I mentioned earlier in this episode. But whenever one of the authors that I talk to for the interview questions recommends either a food or a movie or TV show or like a book, I always want to go check it out after. So me and my family were actually planning on doing like a fun movie night tonight. We were going to have like popcorn, nachos, like soda, and just have a nice little movie night together as a family. And I think now that we should watch Jaws. We had not actually decided on a movie yet, and I think that's like the perfect movie. It's a classic. Me and my sisters, I have two older sisters, and I don't think they've seen it either. I know my parents have seen it. I don't know what they think about it. I've never asked them before, but now I really want to watch it. Like, no joke. I'm not even just saying that. I actually want to go watch it right now, and I hope it's great. I've heard so many good things about it, and of course from you. You seem like you really, really love it. So that's really exciting. I guess I know what I'm watching tonight. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. It was such a blast. I now know what your favorite movie is, and also your favorite TV show, and then of course all of the kind of like behind the scenes of your book and the creation of it, and it was just really nice getting to talk with you today. So thank you again for your time, and of course, as I've said so many times, I'm sorry guys, I'm probably getting all sick of it. Your book was amazing, and thank you for letting me read it. And with that, this brings our interview to a close. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Really appreciate you reading the book and reaching out to offer your own review and do some questions with me. Wish you all the best for your podcast. Take care.
And we're back, you guys. That was the interview. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, because as I said in the interview, it was so much fun for me to get to talk with Michael and get to know the behind the scenes of his book, The Sleepover, of course. And unfortunately, you guys, that brings this week's episode to a close. I am very glad, though, that I got to do an interview, because I have not done an interview in quite some time now. The past few were either no interview at all because the author couldn't, or just like a me saying the interview, kind of like a spoken interview with just me. So it's so great to have an interview this time. I missed it, you guys. I miss interviewing people. It's such a passion of mine. So really glad to be back with some interviews. And the next episode also is going to have an interview. So just if you want to look forward to that, you get a spooky book series review. Yes, a little hint, it's a book series. And then of course we get an interview with the author. Very exciting stuff coming up. Be sure to stay tuned. Keep up with me either on Instagram at Strawberry Milkshake Podcast or here on Spotify, and soon to be a YouTube channel. I'm starting a YouTube channel where all of my author episodes will be over there. So as soon as I start that, I will link it in whatever episode description. Or if you really want to be up to date exactly when it comes out, then be sure to go follow me over on Instagram, like I said, where I will post updates and announcements and everything for my author episodes. So yeah, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I hope you go check out Michael's book, The Sleepover. You can purchase it or view it or watch his YouTube videos by clicking the link in this episode description. And yeah, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And book lovers, always remember, keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book. And I will see you guys very soon. Bye, friends!